we think this been a really good relationship with the Region 1 UDOT. They've been real champions helping us navigate and be able to navigate the political issues that are at play, have been at play, still are at play at the state level, and really see value in this, and what can hopefully they and us have tried to look at it as this is the first one in the state, and if we can kind of set a pattern and create a structure that can be replicable, that's good. And they've really worked hard, and we have as well to try to come up with something that can be duplicated.
So how will the funding be generated with the tax increment then? If there's nothing there, it's just dirt, there's no sales tax.
To start it?
Yeah, how does it?
Have to have funding to start.
Or you'll get increment when it starts to develop. It's just like any other increment.
So every year?
Yeah.
Based on the tax year?
So you know what the assessed value is now,
Yeah.
and when the development starts, then those numbers are going to climb, and so it'll take a few years to start hitting it. But we think there's a lot of interest, as you know.
And how would the sales tax part of that work? Is there a percentage, more of a percentage than we normally get for that area, or am I just confused? I get the property tax part of it.
No, I would assume, and I'm not as sharp on that as I probably ought to be, but my assumption would be that once whatever development comes in there, you would look and have the ability to capture what the sales tax is that's being generated.
100%.
By those, yeah. Well, 100% of our portion.
Yeah, the way I read it is you had to have a separate account set up just for this, so all sales tax that it's generated from that property goes into that account, and then that account then is divided 50-50, right?
Yeah, between this, the state has access to some, and we have access to some.
Okay. Interesting.
But the idea is, based on discussion with UDOT, is that, because I know in our discussions there have been worry from some parties that weren't involved in it initially, at the state, for example, that, well, so you're going to have competing projects that the state's going to want to use their money to do one thing, and you're going to be trying to do your thing. And what we've talked about is no, the idea would be through this board structure, is there would be a prioritization set that everybody agrees with. This is the most important, this is second, this is third, etc. And so those dollars, the state and the city aren't going to be competing with each other and withholding dollars. If it's a state project, we want to be supportive of helping this the best priority. We want to help that get put in place, right? And so some of our dollars, at least the staff would recommend, flow to that to support that project, and vice versa, right? But
back to my question, I get the 50-50 with the state and us, but we get a sales tax, we get a portion of it,
yeah,
and then we're at about 1%.
1%, right?
So, and then with the sales tax generated there, I guess what's the difference? We'll generate it. How does that generate? I mean, how does that fund work? I'm confused. Because we're already going to get sales tax from that area anyway. So what's different?
I think, from my understanding, I think the difference is kind of what the mayor touched on, is that I think the law, you jump in if I misstate this, is it says that the sales tax that's captured off that doesn't just flow into your regular sales tax distribution. It's pulled out and set aside. And the idea is to be able to fund, that's a source of revenue to fund transportation improvements in that specific area.
So you're just creating an account.
Yeah, essentially that money would be like a special revenue account. That's not the right accounting vernacular, but
Just for that purpose?
it would be set aside for that purpose as opposed to flowing into your general dollars and then putting it back in.
So it's the money that's generated there is earmarked to be spent in that area, that geographic.
Yeah, that's a better way of saying it.
For transportation.
But it's not any more money than you would?
No,
Pretty limited.
It's no, okay.
no. it's
The
just no-
share's the same with the state, with the county, with everybody else. It's just earmarked for projects,
Yeah.
transportation projects.
Yeah, I assume the state transportation, the tax commission would know that there's been a TRC established, and that the revenue that's coming off there would be, rather than putting in the general distribution, would be earmarked and would go someplace different.
Okay. Thank you.
What type of projects would UDOT have in that area? You mentioned too, well, I guess that lighted intersection would be UDOT.
Yeah, they've talked about, at least in the discussions I've been involved in, is the potential for certainly one, maybe two eventual semaphores that light, before we lighted intersections that would need to be done when the traffic demand is there. So there's not a lot of projects, and it matches up pretty well because there's not going to be a lot of money generated over time, and there's not a lot of projects, so we think it's workable. And the state's view, again, is similar to the state employees' view, UDOT's view. Again, it's not about the money. It's about trying to provide UDOT with an opportunity to help be supportive of community building. They're trying to reposition that a little bit and be more sensitive to how transportation and development need to work together, both to benefit the city and also to try to benefit UDOT down the road, so they don't put in transportation improvements, for example, in an important area, and then the development completely blows those improvements up because you allow density or things that were never anticipated, right? They've had that happen before, and then basically they find themselves in fairly short order coming back and having to redo what they spent a lot of money to do. And so, again,
Hey there. Let's see. Just going to pause this real quick and check in because we're getting some good views here. People checking in on different platforms. And I just want to explain this is a project that we're working on called publicmeetings.org, where we create summaries of city council meetings from all over the country, mostly focused in Utah. Today we're covering Layton City, Utah. And this is a live meeting that we're going to be then transcribing and summarizing later. So what we'd love to see is just if there's any interest from people watching, if you could drop a link, if you can, find something on YouTube for your city where it's either a county council or a city council meeting, drop it in the chat and we can run it through our AI app to summarize and send it back to you. So it'll be much easier to browse and listen to the different snippets, from specific sections that interest you. So that's what we're doing here. And I'm just going to keep letting it roll as I'm just listening to this in the background as we're processing the summary.
at the local level, that's really been the kind of excitement around the model is if we can collectively show that you can build transportation improvements and development in a coordinated, cooperative way, then it has longevity. And then you're not going back spending more tax dollars to correct something that you've made a guess about what the transportation improvements need to be, and then the development that's taken place overwhelms that, and it fails, kind of a thing. But
Well, and it helps support the overall master plan
yeah,
in different areas.
2018 was in the bill was passed. How come, if it was a good idea in 2018, put into a bill, like why is this the first one 6 years later? Like what? Maybe that's rhetorical. That's the question. Like,
The rules, actually, the rules for the Transportation Commission and UDOT were not passed until last year.
but the formation of the TRZ, I mean, you said it, the first was 2018.
Things like the administrative rules and stuff that govern how you actually set
So-
it up.
so
They
we
pass
were-
the statute and then they said, oh, we'll do the regulations later.
So nobody was excited about it in 2018 to force what you just mentioned, to force it to, well, how do we actually do this? Right. I'm just asking the question, just like,
That was the first step.
And at that time,
The
actually,
legislature passes lots of things that are unrealistic, so they just have to fix it.
So alternatively, so in another situation, we just have that piece of land and UDOT sells the property to whomever piece by piece. But in that scenario, we get 100% of the revenue, right? But whereas here we only get half, but we're thinking that it's better to take half on this because we think that the master plan is worth half of the revenue generation. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, in essence, and again, that,
But it's for what, 20 years is all? Till 2046, and then after that, 100% would come to the city?
yeah.
So,
And and
Yeah.
you're,
And we're also not talking about a lot
a
of
lot of,
revenue.
right, and it's more or less controlling what the outcome of what your
estimate
place
what,
looks
3
like.
million?
Yeah, the estimate in property tax is only about $1 million.
Excuse me?
Sales tax,
Only? Don't use the word only.
well, we were talking
Only to a person.
48
Yes.
million.
Like,
And sales tax is gonna be between 4 to 5 million. It depends on, obviously, the users that locate there. That was based off of existing grocery use that we have and some other property that I tried to figure that out. But it'll be small.
So I guess, in comparison, maybe this will help. Can you give an estimate of the difference between this sales tax revenue and the reimbursement over 20 years compared to like the RC Willie situation in Lincoln? And maybe the difference between those, like monetarily?
RC Willie, we anticipate, well, they have a cap of 1.7 million to be reimbursed, and that'll probably be over a 12-year period for them to capture that for their one building. And so that's kind of where the difference, they collect about 150,000 and they pay about 150,000 each year in property tax so far, and we reimburse that amount until we reach each of the caps for the participating tax entities. But that would be about 12 years, 1.7 million. So this is similar. This includes more than one user, obviously. And it's based on the master plan, so however that ends up, we hope it'll be generally the same.
The hope with the, maybe this is redundant, but the hope with the, an expectation with sharing some of those revenue streams with the state is that we're going to get the transportation improvements that allow the project to function and do well. Right, so it's not, there's a built-in funding mechanism. When that semaphore needs to go in, there's nobody saying we don't have the budget to put that in, and you can do it, which contributes to the success of the area.
One of my concerns was, obviously, the state can figure out their own financing, they can find money where they want to find money. It seems like we are restricted from doing that, so my first instinct was like, I don't want to share money with people that we have to generate our own, and they can find it, whatever fund they find it out of. But to your point, the improvements that they would make from that fund have to be directed back to the area, the TRZ. So it's really just we're capturing the funds, we're making them stay here. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
And prioritizing the projects.
And I think we hope at the end of the, sorry, but we hope that just based on our discussions, at least with Rob, like the director, I can't speak for him, but we've had a lot of discussions about this over the years, is that they're very, at the local level, they're very committed to help this be successful. They very much have the view that this is about the community, about Layton. It's not about really UDOT per se, except trying to protect their investments. They're happy to be a partner with us. They've been quite generous. It's been different than sometimes it is in interacting with the state. I'm not saying that's negative, but it's been very, very positive, and they have the vision. So I think the way that hopefully it's structured is once this board is put in place, that really becomes kind of the governing body, and that's really made up of local, if you will, Region 1 people, and local meaning the city. I don't think we'll anticipate having influence from Salt Lake, if that makes sense, the legislature, et cetera. In this, I think it'll be they have to approve the framework, but hopefully then it's a give and take that exists at a local level. And we do that. We meet with UDOT on these kind of things every other month as a standing meeting for years and years, and work through those. What needs to be done here? How do we do it? How do we cooperate? So that's the expectation is that we both have a vested interest in making this area successful. And again, you just don't have ever hardly in this community an opportunity where you have that kind of massive land that is under a single ownership and is committed to be a partner with you to allow the city to work with them to place the entitlements on there, and then it's just a really rare thing, especially for that scale. We've had, I'm talking too much, but we've had some commercial brokers over the years that have inquired about that. When we talked to them about what we were trying to do there, even in the early days, they were amazed, one, that kind of opportunity would exist, and were fairly high in their praise of, boy, if you guys can, if the state can pull that off for the development side, that could be a remarkable place. One of them has said repeatedly when he comes through that this will be one of the prime sites in
That was my
Utah.
question. Because it's new, and so I wouldn't want to discourage development by saying we're not getting involved with that, it's brand new, we'll go do something else. But could it potentially be a situation where you could get a pretty elite, or I guess high level entity come in there and want to be a part of it because they know it's going to be master planned in a way that maybe they wouldn't want to come into a place that's got 12 different parcels and they're going to be on one and then they have no idea what's going on in the other?
Yeah, that's the hope.
That's the key to-
That's been the
yeah.
vision, is that a large developer that would have experience in the area, there'd be a lot of interest in the property, and that's why they're keeping it together. There have been efforts through the process, let's leave it at that, efforts to break that up, break the property up, peel off pieces here and there, and UDOT, to their credit, has, we've spent a lot of elbow grease on them at the same time, but to not do that, because it's such a rare thing, but we think there's safeguards and guardrails in place, and so the development, we have some local developers that are extremely interested in this, and we expect that there will be some, either maybe even some outside developers across the state, maybe even regionally, that will see an opportunity to develop it under a master plan, and so that's the hope. There's still a lot of work to be done, and you guys will be involved in that and the process, but it's really important to get this in place to stop some of the overtures that are being made politically, to get fingers in the pie, if you will, and to have the Transportation Commission adopt it was big, and then by statute we had to do the public hearing, and then that locks that kind of down, and then we'll continue to work on it. So I apologize for talking to you,
All right.
touching the other comment.
So I'm a proponent of elected officials choosing how tax dollars are spent. This board, the makeup is only 3. A representative of the city, I think it said, that's familiar with construction or development. I feel better that it's tied to this area and specifically transportation, but is there any oversight, whether from this council or the UTA board, how decisions are made of what projects are approved from that board? Because that board's only 3 people.
Yeah. That's a good question. We talked about that. What we would envision, and the bylaws, the structure of how that board will function needs to be written. It wasn't dictated in state statute. As I recall, the agreement just talks about that'll have to be done as part of the follow process. But as explained to the mayor, at least in our discussions, the way we've anticipated it would probably, I would recommend that our representative, because it needs to be, our view is, it's not a political appointment, it's an operational appointment. You're looking at transportation improvements. That's what we're really talking about. So, for example, I think our public works director would be the best one that's who we rely on to do city projects. And the state may do the same thing. But the funding, when those projects are talked about among that board, either before they sort of talk about them as part of some kind of a planning, visioning process on us, we would identify with you, we collectively would identify, we think these are the projects that would be important, i.e. an underpass, there needs to be that. That's an important thing for the city to do. That would be, they wouldn't come up with those in a vacuum, they would come up with those based on discussions internally with the city or with they're elected officials, and I think the state would probably do the same thing. Then I think what they would do is come back and say, okay, we've identified 4 projects that make sense here. These are the priorities that we think, strictly from a operational perspective, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4. I think those should come back, then back through the staff, and Layton City, as you see in there, is the one that will provide the staffing to the board. So we're going to be heavily involved in it. Just come back and say, okay, council, these are the 4 projects that have generally been identified by UDOT and us. These are the prioritizations. What do you think? Do you have any concerns about that? And you may say, no, that sounds great. Or you may say, well, we're getting a lot of questions about this interchange, or the semaphores. We think it's better, in response to, I'm just making things up, to the public, to say, let's get that intersection in, and then let's make the underpass second, for example. So eventually it's going to come back through you guys, and you have to provide the funding. And if it's not according to your desires, they have no ability to fund it on their own.
When you say the funding, you're talking
project.
like whatever hasn't been collected already,
Yeah.
whatever to complete the project.
Yeah. And the way the increment's going to be generated over time, and the dollar amounts, I think that's going to be the reality is that whatever the city or the state that wants to fund it is going to have to commit some funds up front that are over and above what has been generated today, because it's just not going to generate that much money. So that's definitely, you'll have the say on it.
So the money, so like the ramp commission, how that works, where you have the commissioners, they go through all the projects, they put a priority together, they present it to us, and we okay it to be funded. This is kind of like this, or
I think it's
to
kind of like
Tyson's
that.
point, because if we don't, maybe we don't
REP
want
is an advisory board.
Uh-huh. Maybe we don't want to do, I don't know, maybe something happens that we don't, this board says, no, we want to do this, and we have information, or that, no, we don't want to do that.
Yeah, I think that, I would be surprised, I think you'll, because
Or if the state
Who's the
doesn't
third
want,
member? Just one that we agree with?
The
One that
financial advisor, or,
both parties agree to?
Yeah.
who writes the check
I guess
for the
that's-
money that's generated? Who writes the check? It says, yep, here's the money for the project, for that area.
Does Layton City facilitate the TRZ account, the fund account?
We hold the account, we'll administer the account, or manage the account. The board would be the one that approves expending the money.
Well, not us.
Well, if you build the project first, then it would be Layton City that approves the funding for the project. If you wait 20 years, because that's probably how long it'll take to generate the increment, then the board could.
Because they have the money.
Well, yeah, and the city's going to be this, the administration, I think, of this is going to be done by the city. UDOT's not going to, if they end up doing these across the state, UDOT's not going to get involved in
Yeah.
managing all the TRCs. The city's responsibility to manage it, so I imagine we'll have to set up separate accounts, and we'll track it, we'll be the staffing to it. Back to your comparison to the ramp, I think that's somewhat accurate, except that the ramp are appointed or selected, but they don't work for the entities. They're citizens, right? In this case, at least on our side, and I suspect the same on UDOT's side, these are employees who work for, your representatives are employees of the city who are going to be on this. And so I think they'll be pretty well attuned in and they know what the process is in Layton, and I'm sure the UDOT appointees will know what the process is on UDOT. So I don't think you'll have a board that will be trying to step significantly outside of it, even at all, of what their typical priorities are. Does that make sense? I think they won't have a sense of independence that we have some power that we can act and force contrary to what our entities want. I don't think that'll happen. And I think it's one of the beauties, frankly, of not having it be outside people. It's really a small group. It's them. We work all together with Region 1 all the time, and it's just us. It's not somebody in Salt Lake or legislators, with all due respect, coming in and saying, well, I think this, or I think that. These are things we do anyway, but it's a little more structured. And one thing about it, and I'm talking too much, but is this is the first one, so nobody's ever done this before.
Right.
We're just trying to work through these details, and there may be some fits and starts, and our hope is in good faith.
Well-
You know, we can work through those, and if there's an issue, Rob's committed, we'll fix them, and we said the
Yeah.
same thing. If we run into something we missed, we'll work to fix it. But we, at some point, it has to start, and get all the side chatter kept to the side, and then we can start working through these issues. So that's kind of where we're at now.
The benefit to that is the legislation isn't very thick yet. It's,
Right.
It's
It's not.
pretty flexible.
Well, and you have two entities that are trying to accomplish something, so it's a little easier to make it work. And then when you get it, then it has to come before the board or the council because of the money comes out of the city, and then that, I would assume we'll know a lot about it before it comes to where we have to say, hey, you know, I mean, it won't be like a surprise, you know, I hope.
But it's
Shouldn't be.
still different than,
But it's different.
with the EDA and the RDA, we have a separate meeting and we're the board.
Yeah,
And we
yeah,
need to say, yeah, do it, don't do it,
And we
whatever.
still kind of are, because when they come, it's just like ramp, we can say no.
It sounds like these projects are probably going to be big enough that they're going to be in the form of reimbursement, so we the money for it first.
We have to
And most of
okay
the funds
that.
are going to be reimbursed over the 20 years, the length of the agreement.
Yeah, city project, we would initiate it and make the commitment on the funding. To come heck or high water, if something falls apart, then we're going to finish it, and the UDOT has made the same commitment on their end. So nobody's left holding the bag, or a project halfway done, and the state says, well, we're not funding anymore, or we say, we're not funding anymore. That there's that commitment upfront. And that's how UDOT does their projects, just like we've tried to do, well, we have done over 30-some years, is we don't start a project unless we come to the council, and the council said, yeah, we set aside this money, so there's no risk of,
We're not going to run out and call it quits and have something half done.
I think the other thing that gives me, you know, that makes me feel fine about it is the fact that the board, whatever projects, one that they're going to put forth, are going to basically be, you know, suggested or submitted from the parties they're representing, which in our case is us and our staff, as well as none of those projects can be outside of what we've agreed to in the plan for that area already. So for me, the idea of a board, 3-person or 20-person going rogue is a little off, just because
20-person?
we won't talk about that.
18.
18, sorry,
18.
you know, round.
Does that?
We will
Apparently-
mention names,
apparently it
just
happens.
numbers.
But because we've already put in place this plan for this area, this too is agreeing and basically saying, yes, we're agreeing that this is what the plan is for that space. So I just can't, and you know, maybe I'm just being, you know, faithful and naive, but I can't imagine that this 3-person board would be able to go outside of that with all that's put in place already to prevent those things from happening.
Now, in fact, one thing I forgot to mention is this agreement actually requires a separate agreement for each of the projects that are brought to the board. So that will solve the
Yeah.
concerns.
Lead with that one.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
should have. I don't know why I left it.
Well, it kind of interrupted his presentation
Yeah, we
anyway.
did, we jumped in.
He only
These
got-
used
No,
to
they
it.
asked for it, they paused and said.
Have we covered everything now?
Yeah, I was going to say, how we doing?
I'm sure we paused.
Yeah, jump in.
Yeah, don't ever pause. and
This
do
just
that.
shows
Yeah.
you.
Don't breathe.
This clip was ready.
That was the end, so
Okay.
This is cool.
everything in orange is the area.
Personally, I like it because it gives control and the outcome is going to be consistent and a product that you'll be proud of and looks like it's planned and not hodgepodge. Or you sit there with some parcels that aren't even developed yet, which that's happened to us. So, anyway. Okay,
Okay?
that's it on that one. We good?
Yeah.
You guys good?
So once this is done, what's like next steps? Just because you know residents, as well as us, because we're residents, always want to know, when are we getting, fill in the blank? So what are the time frames? What's the next steps?
Zach and a backhoe with this.
I don't think I put Zach.
It's more Tyson speed.
I know, but,
No, Zach's gonna work on the instructions for the board.
White collar engineer, okay.
There was a Traco at Player Mountain, did you see that?
So one of the things which we've talked about,
Senator.
Bill and I and Chad have talked about this, Clint might have been involved with some of those as well, but essentially, this is a big piece to get this locked down and going forward. What we think is we need to begin the process now of working through the entitlements. The state can't, I'm talking pretty generally here, but the state isn't in the business of asking for entitlements typically, right? They don't typically ask for things to be rezoned on their property. They usually just sell their ground at whatever the underlying zone is that's already exists when they purchase it, which was ag in this case. Most of that was an orchard. But what we think we need to do internally is to look at, do some more thinking about it, quick thinking, and then present to you maybe the possibility of some kind of an overlay zone would go on this piece of property that would actually, we have the plan, but would bring that plan into our planning process as an actual type of zone, whether it's a town center zone or something that gives added to the process. And so we think that'll take us a couple of months to work through that. Maybe I'm being generous there, but we want to work through that and be able to propose that to you. At the same time, is work parallel with that to get the entitlements. What do we need to do to get the entitlements? Meaning the zone, put the zoning in place. And then the hope is to package that, and we're working with UDOT all through that process, and then to package that, and then UDOT would actually buy off on that and then get it out on the market. And we're not quite sure whether they'll use I think that speaks that they'll use their traditional processes, which is by auction. We'll see if that holds or whether it doesn't, but the hope is that there'll be a thoughtful review, but when it goes out, it'll go out as one piece, and it'll go out with all of these entitlements in place that says this has been zoned for this, so there's nobody can say we didn't know what we were buying. Now, a developer may come in after the fact, that's just what they do, and that's okay. They may say, hey, you've got this kind of zoning here, and can we switch it? Can we move this one 300 feet this way and move the other one 300 feet that way? Whatever, right? You have, depending on who buys it, they may have certain relationships with certain grocers, for example, that some like to do it, be positioned this way, and some want to be positioned this way. And so they'll have to come back to the city at that point in time and say, hey, we want to tweak this, but we don't think there'll be any, unless we would consent it, which I don't think we would do. We'll be collectively given your mindset to this point is we're not talking about significant changes, right? We're talking about making tweaks around. Somebody says we're bringing in XYZ company. They won't fit on this pad. Can we extend it by a half acre? And you have the ability to say, yeah, we will, or no, we won't. So those things will probably happen. Those are the next steps, is get that in place and packaged, and then get it out on the market. And there's quite a bit of informal interest. There's some local developers that we talked about some of those that have relationships with tenants. One, a grocer we talked about, that is really, really anxious, calls on a regular basis to see what the status is. And we suspect there'll be others as well.
But that master plan for this area, is that part of the development agreement as well? That goes with we make this agreement if it's passed tonight, but also the development agreement. Or maybe this is part of the development agreement. It gets in.
We could, yeah. The reference in the language with the contract with the state talks about, I think one of the ones highlights is it needs to be consistent with
The planning.
The
But
planning.
I'm saying, when you said that UDOT's going to go out and sell this with that development agreement. Like, this is what you have to build.
Yeah, these are conditions, you have to follow this,
Right.
these entitlements have been put in place in this agreement. So that's
I
this is
think
really
they're
not,
calling it a development agreement.
Yeah, that's what we
but-
call it. But that's
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
yeah,
it goes with it. It's like, yeah, you want it, but here's what it looks like.
yeah. Again, that's the benefit, be
For
done.
us,
Plus, we think the big benefit of this
Good job.
is that we have that for such a large scale, the opportunity to do that. Once in a while, you have 2 or 3 acres. You know, we had, down here south of us, we're close to this kind of an opportunity down here south of Gentile. And then at the last minute, it came apart of our own doing, of the city's doing, but unfortunately. But, you know, this is, compared to that scale, is you know, 4 times bigger. So it's really an opportunity of hopefully what can be. And with you guys' guidance, and Mayor and I were, you know, talking, this is not going to evolve in a year. You know, it's going to take some time, but it can be a remarkable thing for the area.
Yeah. You gotta get started.
That'll be an importance of the overlay zone. We'll have to be pretty careful and make sure it's well defined so we
Yeah.
know the outcome.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that's a big key here, yeah. Especially where we don't control the property. Okay, any other questions? No, I'm going to go ahead and move on. You have, well, it is a public hearing in the next meeting, so you're welcome to ask the questions again.
No, just one other question.
Sure.
Back to the town center overlay you're talking about. Will it be specific for that, or is it going to be a zone that can be used in the other town centers, more general?
It may be one.
Like, we've got one out west.
It may be one, or it
I
might
think
be,
that's west.
might be both. We don't know
That way.
That way's west.
That's where that is.
It's okay. We know which
But
way.
do you anticipate having an overlay for each town center?
yet. Not
Well-
always.
I think so, but-
Well, the others
If you
wouldn't be a
recall-
TRZ though.
No, I'm not talking about TRC, I was talking about, you
No.
mentioned that you needed to create a.
If you recall the economic development plan, actually the Highway 89 Gordon and then the West Layton Town Center were actually separate than the others that were identified in the general plan
Yes.
in that process. So we may just limit it to that, I don't know.
Okay, that was the question.
I think as we start through that in more earnest and talk about it internally, staff and try to figure it out, and then certainly when we have discussions with you guys about it, I think it'll hopefully become clear that this is either unique or it's not. And if it's unique, then it needs to maybe have its own unique approach, because there's some things that we think are really important, critical here to our success that may not apply out west. Or we may find just the opposite, that the ideas here also translate here, and then that would be easier. But I think we're very open to try to make sure that this opportunity is maximized, if you will, and because it's such a key piece. So that's not a good answer, but that's,
No,
as we've talked about it just generally, we hope the answer will come to us as we start working through that process and get the feedback.
To Bettina's point, we want to go. Like,
We don't have to push through, we just like to know
yeah,
Yeah.
let's go.
good answers for people.
Thank you.
Okay, good? Last call. Okay, we're moving on. Let's go ahead and go on to item number 4, which is a discussion of My Hometown Initiative. And this is, if you recall at the last meeting when we did our quick report, I had mentioned that Clint and I had attended this meeting. And I felt like it was important enough that we wanted to have a discussion amongst ourselves, really see if it's something that we want to embrace or not, and kind of just have an open discussion, because typically we don't have a lot of time to discuss items. And this, to me, is kind of very interesting. I like the concept behind it. I know Lon's going to represent Morgan in this case, because Morgan was there. No?
I'm not representing anybody.
You're familiar with it? or-
Yeah, we have the.
or-
Playing the role of Morgan.
Yeah, are you, yeah, I was gonna say, I didn't know if he was gonna present anything on it based upon his notes, but if not, then, I think Clint and I can pretty much, fill you guys in on and let you know what it's about. I'll go ahead and kind of start and Clint add in as much as possible, because it was it was a great meeting. It was one that was, has to do more with, housing and improvements and, blighted areas, but it's a program that's designed to really allow our citizens to take ownership and contribute and to kind of help pay it forward. But in order to really get it off the ground and that, it needs city support as well as the folks behind this, which it's, I'll be clear here, it's not a specific one faith, but it's more or less interfaith based that will end up driving it, although the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the one that kind of spearheaded it. They started down in West Jordan with the project with this, and it took hold, and the citizens really embraced it and kind of put it to good use, and then Ogden City's been doing it now. And it's one of those things where, take for instance, I don't know, let's just say west of the, or east of the high school here, we've got some homes over there that are, you know, they're some of our older homes perhaps, and yet maybe some of them need some painting done on them, or the yard work done, or cleanup areas, right? So you form a group that comes together, and actually, let me back up. You pretty much set this up much like how we have our emergency, our CERT program, right? Where you have block captains or designated areas. So you have an ownership area of say like a block captain with some other folks in there that say, hey.
Okay, very good. Seeing that there's no more, I'll go ahead and bring it back to the council. And close the public hearing.
And close the public hearing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we adopt Resolution 25-01. I'll do a roll call vote on this, so I'll start down here with Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Councilmember Watson,
Yes.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith Edmondson,
Aye.
and Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Okay, there you have it. It's unanimous. That is the last item on our agenda, unless anybody has any unfinished business they'd like to address. If not, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So be it.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate everyone attending tonight, and I hope you can start your new year off and have some great resolutions going forward. So.
Coming home with the power out and finding my wife had rearranged all the furniture. I stubbed my toes a lot, and I felt like cussing a lot. But other assessors and the good people at the Tax Commission helped navigate these situations as they arose. The Weber County team was more important to our success. The relationships built between the attorneys, the commission, the clerk auditor, human resources, IT, operations, the recorder surveyor, and the treasurer's offices cannot be overstated. In some counties, these people can't even sit in the same room together. In Weber County, we can have frank and even uncomfortable conversations and still walk away feeling good about each other and be friends. The assessor's office team was the most significant day-to-day contributor to our success. Paraphrasing my good friend John Bond, I stood on the shoulders of giants. Without the fantastic people we have, I would have never had the time to accomplish the things that I did. The goal of a good administrator is to make yourself obsolete. As things sit now, we've achieved that goal. I could literally leave the office for a month and things would still continue to operate smoothly. Probably smoother than they do when I am there. I've worked with wonderful people over my career, but have never had the pleasure of associating myself with such a magnificent group. Most importantly, my family. My girls were both in high school when we talked about running for elected office. Their first thought was, how embarrassing, Dad. Their next thought was, Dad, are people going to be mean to you? Fortunately, the answer is no, mostly. Then I literally have a little smiley face emoji on my paper there. I can actually recount on one hand throughout my almost 25-year career in the assessment industry the actual bad interactions I've had. I've had thousands of interactions with people across 2 different counties, and for the most part, they've been really, really good. Then there's my wife, Randy. She stood by my side through thick and thin. She patiently listened to my stories, frustrations, worries, and triumphs. She stood by my side at various events like county conventions. I said multiple times that she's the only reason people would vote for me.
She charmed and encouraged people. We would meet at conventions and meet the candidate nights. I've literally heard multiple people say, "I'm not sure about your husband, but I like you, so I'll vote for him." In the end, I want to thank everyone for their professionalism, patience, and kindness. Thank you very much, Commissioner, for allowing me to take the time. And
Thank
I
you.
think that deserves a round of applause.
November 19th, 2024, and I've asked Member Little to offer a word of prayer, and after which, if you all rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our dear, kind, gracious Heavenly Father, we are grateful for the opportunity to serve in this community. Thank Thee, Father, for this opportunity we can discuss and the matters that are at hand today. Pray for Thy guidance and direction always, and help us to come to a decision that will benefit this community and help all those who are involved. We pray for Thy blessing to be with those who are sick and help them to get feeling better. And these things we say in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion by Member Little to
All right. I'm going to pause that for a second and switch over to our summary view. 1 second here. We should be able to do this. Okay. I guess I got to stop this or replace screen sharing. We're going to switch over to the Morgan County summary page. Let's see how this looks. Actually, not bad. I wonder if I could change the view to mobile. Oh, that's not right. Shrink it way down like that. I guess that kind of works. So this is what we're looking at for the meeting summary format. It's got different sections here, timestamps linking directly to each one. So let's see. We'll pick it up right up after the morning prayer that we just heard on the YouTube video with admin items.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion by Member Little to approve
Second.
and a second by Member McMillan. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries, unanimous. Okay, declaration of any conflicts of interest by members of the Planning Commission with any items on the agenda. Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Now for public comment. On our agenda, we have 2 that are administrative items that do not have their separate public hearing. So if you wish to comment on any of those, now would be your time. However, we have 2 legislative items, Gardner Development Rezone and the Village at Trappers Loop Rezone, and each one of those agenda items will have their own public hearing. So if you wish to comment on either one of those, we ask that you wait until that time of the public hearing to make your comment. So now the time, if you want to address us regarding any of the administrative items or any other item that you care to bring up before the Planning Commission, now would be your time. If you have a comment, then please step up to the lectern and state your name for the record.
Kevin Kurtz. I am a resident in the Cottonwoods community. I was here for the original meeting on this topic back in November when it was requested by the presenter to continue this to a later meeting. I believe it was the December 12th meeting. I believe it was then pushed to this meeting. There was additional information that they wanted to gather before presenting. I am not aware that any of that information has been presented. I do believe that considering the impact on the general community as well as on the Cottonwoods specifically, I think it warrants some ability for the public to comment and review that information.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you. We will move on. Our first item, number 6, this is a discussion decision, Cottonwoods Development Agreement Amendment. Move on. Our first item, number 6, this is a discussion decision, Cottonwoods Development Agreement Amendment.
Back in November, we did hold a public hearing for this item, and it was discussed at that time to push it off to December 19th. At that time, it would also be a public hearing to allow for public comment. They have requested another continuation till February, the first meeting in February. We're doing some legal research into the development agreement and case law surrounding this type of situation that we find ourselves in. So staff is recommending that we continue it to the first meeting in February, at which time it will be listed as a public hearing legislative item.
Okay. Thank you. I'll be ready for a motion then to continue this agenda item to our February 13th, 2025 meeting.
Madam Chair, I motion that application 23.072, the Cottonwoods Development Agreement, be postponed, continued?
Continued.
Continued, sorry. Continued to the February 13th, 2025 meeting.
Okay, I have a motion by Member Little.
Second?
And a second by Member Maloney. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries
Thank you.
unanimous. Thank you. The next item is the LD Max CUP.
Thank you and good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. Application 24.056 is the LD Max CUP application located at 3908 West Willow Creek Road with the parcel number and serial number listed in your staff report and is within the commercial buffer zone. The previous application was heard for this applicant at this property. The land use text amendment suggested by the applicant to talk about manufacturing in the use table. It was determined by the county commission at their regularly scheduled meeting on October 29 of this year that the property in question, which by all means strange in its aspect that it is a parcel at the airport, is considered on airport property, and as such the use can be taken care of more administratively rather than through a legislative action and a code text amendment. As such, this CUP request has been reviewed by staff with the suggested conditions in your staff report pertaining mainly to the operation of the business hours and of noise mitigation. The county, this application will continue on with a recommendation from this body to the county commission, but again, as a on airport use is what's being discussed tonight. And we had the applicant regrettably could not be here tonight, Madam Chair, and with a phone call by staff to clarify, he went through the process and what the business would entail, and was able to speak specifically to things that again could be stipulated here as conditions, but in regards to noise, for example, it's all his business aims to create that particular product there on your screen. It's as the applicant describes, and tried to just jot some notes down of what he said. It's If you look at the wings, you notice those things that are kind of bent upwards. Those are called winglets, and that's the part that he makes. And so he talked about the process that it would take to create that isn't one that requires real heavy machinery or a lot of manpower or anything like that. He says his heaviest and loudest machines are grinders and sanders, and so those are pretty normal machines in the industrial zones we have in the county. He talked about if there was going to be odor coming from the process that he uses to manufacture that, and there may be some odor in the shop, and it being vented wouldn't affect the nearby property owners. It's dealing with epoxy and having that set, and it requires certain heat, temperatures and cooking times, and there's normal odors that come from that, but nothing noxious or nothing annoying or anything like that. We asked if the process would require him to have doors open so that if there were noises or odor that could be, that would be disruptive to the neighbors. He mentioned that the process requires him to keep a stable temperature as the epoxy is setting, as he's putting the epoxy mixture together and all of that. He would keep the doors closed and everything would be pretty well self-contained on the property. Otherwise, I wanted to give that short little spiel from the applicant's description to staff, and with the applicant not here, staff is happy to answer questions, Madam Chair.
Any questions for staff?
You talked about operation hours.
As a condition in your staff report, it says that the operation must be mindful of business hours to prevent undue disturbance to the neighboring properties with activities limited to approved hours unless otherwise permitted by the county. And that's the purpose of our meeting tonight, is if the planning commission does see potential detrimental negative effects, that you have the ability to issue stipulations to mitigate those perceived effects.
Okay, so there weren't any set hours, but we could. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions now? I have received an email from member Murray, who's unable to be here. He just wanted to make certain that the manufacturing process referenced in the applicant's letter does not produce noise, odors, or other environmental nuisances that will negatively impact the nearby neighbors, regardless of the time of day, business hours or not. So those were his concerns, but I think they were addressed by staff.
Madam Chair, our office has only received a small handful of calls about this item, and they generally reference that, and so that's when staff made the call and got that clarification. I believe he invented that part that you see, and so it's his patent, his part, and he does it all himself. It's remarkable.
Does planning commission wish to impose some hours?
Yeah, I think general business hours is probably a stipulation we need to at least talk about, right?
Yeah, what does
And
that mean?
What those look like. What is there current hours under use of the airport right now? Do they have stipulations upon flight hours, restrictions?
Daylight. I mean, that's for flying, landing, since there's no lights, but I don't think as far as operation in the hangars, no, there's no hours.
I guess my other question, so if they do get a conditional use permit and then let's say there are odors and there is noise maybe that wasn't intended, what does that look like in terms of mitigating that?
We would go through the normal code enforcement process where we would send them a courtesy notice about the odor or the noise or the complaint, and then they can come in and they can contest it or discuss with staff a way to remedy it.
Okay.
It really isn't a matter of if, though. This is a conditional use permit, which according to state statute is required to be approved with negative impacts being mitigated.
hours? Anyone have ideas? Hours you want to put in?
Without the applicant here, I don't know. Does code have anything about operation hours?
Not for, our business license section has, I think ending by 10 p.m. The quiet hours are between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. if I'm not mistaken.
I would think you'd want these a little more strict, being right next to houses.
Across the street, yeah.
Bills. Like 9 to 5. Banking hours? Restaurant hours or banking hours? Those are two different business hours.
Question you have to ask yourself is that reasonably mitigating a negative impact? And you need to verbally identify the negative impact. And then the question is it reasonable? And I think 9 to 5 would not be reasonable.
9 to 5 seems like fairly normal business hours unless you're an establishment that's open for dinner. But,
Home occupations are 6 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, and that includes auto repair as well in home occupation areas. So again, 9 to 5, you're holding a business that conducts the entire business inside the building with the doors closed, conducts the manufacturing of the winglets inside with the doors closed, where the odor is not hazard and is not anticipated to cross property lines. And you want to hold him to a different standard than auto repair in a residential neighborhood. I think it could be argued that that's not reasonable.
I have a question, being that this business is in a certain proximity to many other businesses in the area. This one needing a CUP, being that it's on the airport property, is that versus those businesses are in adjacent properties?
Yeah, so our airport overlay zone requires any commercial activity, to get a conditional use permit from the county commission with planning commission recommendation. So the other commercial buffer zones are not held to this standard. There's a whole list of commercial buffer uses that they can do, which I think exceeds what this property owner wants to do. And the only reason he's going through this is because he's on airport.
Anyone else have suggestions for business hours, like 7 to 6, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m.? What were you thinking? Okay, if you want it. Okay. That's fine.
It's 55.323. Supplementary. Policy.
So our code under conditional uses includes some examples of conditions that can be attached. The Planning Commission may require conditions relating to safety for persons and property. And then there's some samples here: building elevations and grading plans, which will prevent or minimize floodwater damage. The relocation, covering, or fencing of irrigation ditches, drainage channels, or other potential attractive nuisances existing on or adjacent to the property. Increased setbacks, distances. This doesn't really apply because the building is existing. Appropriate design, construction, location of structures this also doesn't apply because it's an existing structure. You can limit and control the number, location, color, size, height, light, and landscaping of outdoor advertising signs. Again, that doesn't really apply. Fences to offset visual hazards or nuisances. Time of day, days of week, conditional use may operate. Conditions relating to health and sanitation. So those are just some of the conditions that you can look at adding in.
We can limit days of the week too if we wish.
I guess my general thought would be then 7 to 6 o'clock general business hours, Monday through Saturday, excluding Sunday. As a general thought, but depending on what you're.
Well, we need to start somewhere.
You could ask the county attorney, but I would think that that's a reasonable request.
Please tell us if we're out of line or.
You're going to have to be able to articulate exactly the detrimental effect and then how, whatever conditions you're going to impose, how they are going to limit that and if those are reasonable.
The noise, all we're trying to control is the noise.
Has there been any investigation into how much noise it's generating with all the doors closed, and are there other businesses on the property that are creating noise? We got the airplanes,
That's what's
yeah,
kinda funny,
coming in and out,
If you
and
start
are
speaking
those
decibel
hours?
To that, airplanes are going to exclude any of those decibel limits within a
Yeah.
residential
Which are different.
area.
And what are those hours? So, I mean,
Just the sunset time changes, right?
so is it reasonable to limit one person if you've got airplanes flying in all day that are probably way louder?
So after hearing that, do you have,
It's really, what you're saying is the only stipulation we really run by is the general 6 to 10 o'clock.
But that's not even for this property.
And that's 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. that you can't make noise. That's what the home occupation ordinance says.
but this isn't a home occupation.
Yeah, so this wouldn't fall in that.
But
No, that's
business
true.
license.
But some of the things that qualify as a home occupation exceed what he's requesting to do, i.e., auto repair.
Thought it'd be such a hard decision.
They. What about the condition then that the operation must be mindful of business hours to prevent undue disturbances? That problematic as a condition? Is this
I think
general?
that is probably too general. I mean, because you do want to make sure whatever condition you're imposing is specifically related to, the detrimental effect.
As per code, we have the ability to set hours. However, on a legal basis, we need to make sure that those
Those are reasonable. And I think what Josh is trying to get at is when we're looking at reasonable, if we're imposing, it's kind of like the discrimination. If we're imposing this on this one place as opposed to maybe even a home occupation across the street or the airport right there. I think you have to kind of weigh and make sure that when we're being reasonable, we're applying the law kind of consistently to it.
I see what you're saying, because if I lived across the street, happened to open a garage, from what we're speaking at this point, I'd have less restriction upon me opening a home automotive business than I would 7 a.m. to 6 p.m.
In a
hours of operations, huh?
So are you suggesting we remove that condition if we can't be more specific?
If you can't be more specific and you don't think that you can make sure that you're applying it kind of consistently to similar areas and occupations, and it is a commercial zone, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
So, I mean, I think that's something else we need to take into account, but it is absolutely up to you. And I'll just fight it at the back end if it's wrong. I'll be here to help you.
Okay.
So, you guys are the
So ideas?
Approve it?
As I say, my general opinion is too, with, like I said, moving across the street to have a home business. I don't know if we can impose any more restrictions than the guy across the street in a residential area, where this is a general commercial type establishment.
6 to 10? Is that what you're thinking?
I think there's a little bit of legal basis to be able
We'll
to
make
back
it-
that with.
Try to make it easy for you, Jackie?
Yeah, yes, I appreciate that. I mean, because I think that's fairly consistent when we're talking about noise ordinances for everybody. I mean, you don't want your neighbor out there sanding his deck at 10 o'clock at night either.
Madam Chair, I move we recommend approval to the County Commission for the LD Max LLC CUP application 24.053 to allow for commercial use on airport at the property located at 3908 West Willow Creek Road in unincorporated Morgan County based on the findings and with the conditions listed in the staff report dated December 19, 2024, with the additional stipulations of general business hours being 6 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Monday through Saturday?
I think you're okay
Yeah, that's 6 days a week.
Monday through
Yes, I
Saturday.
think that's reasonable for a business.
Okay, I have a motion by Member McMillan. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second by Member Little. Any discussion on this motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Unanimous. Okay, the next item, we move into our legislative decisions. The first one is the Gardner Development Rezone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Gardner Development Rezone is application 24.060. It's located at approximately 4815 West Old Highway Road, and has the current zoning. It's split. Every property, and I just want to say this earlier in my report, that every property has split zoning, but the zoning's present across the combined properties is commercial highway, or highway commercial, RM15, which is multiple residential, 15,000 square foot minimum, A20, which is agriculture, 20 acre minimum, and RR1, which is rural residential, 1 acre minimum. So all four of those zones are represented within the boundaries of the combined properties. And Madam Chair, the properties are referenced by the parcel numbers and serial numbers contained in your staff report. And the request for tonight is to rezone property from highway commercial A20, RR1, and RM15 to RM15 completely, and then to have the future land use map also amend from a split designation of agriculture and rural residential 1 to the town center future land use designation. Point I'd like to make is that while we have village low density residential as a land use designation on the future land use map, we don't have one for multifamily or anything in between. And to represent all of commercial and all of multifamily is the town center future land use map designation. That said, the rezone again is to RM15 completely and to town center completely across all of the properties. With that, you'll find a helpful chart in your staff report that goes through the split designations for the properties. The applicant narrative is contained therein, and staff has conducted a review of this request and finds that it meets the minimum requirements for, or the requirements for a rezone and an applicable land use map amendment, and staff supports such a request because the requested zoning of RM15 is adjacent directly to the south, and it fits the general character of the area that features townhomes to the east and, to the west and north, with applications for townhomes to the south in that area. And as far as the properties, you have A20 zoned properties that are 4.43 acres, as I'm reading there, and smaller than that. And so this would fix a nonconformity that would allow for development, Madam Chair. Otherwise, the applicant is in the audience tonight, and staff is happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Any questions for staff first? I don't.
Talk to the applicant now?
Yeah, we can talk to the applicant if there's no more questions for staff. If the applicant would like to come forward, please state your name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Skylar Gardner, the representative for Gardner Development this evening. Jeremy did a good job outlining what we're proposing. There is that parcel to the south that is already rezoned, and I believe already has some form of concept or maybe preliminary approvals for higher density housing. And we are proposing to rezone these 4 parcels to mirror or even match what is being proposed to the south.
I have one question. In our packet, staff put in a narrative from you. It's right next to the table. And it says, current zoning is commercial highway in A20. We would like to amend the zoning to match the 9-acre parcel to the south with an RM15 zoning with a small section adjacent to Old Highway as highway commercial. So you don't want highway commercial up on Old Highway?
Yeah, that, excuse me, at the time we did submit this application, yeah, we were thinking that maybe along Old Highway we might keep a small 1.5 acre parcel for a commercial application, but at this point we're proposing that all of it be RM15.
They can pull out portions of a property that's currently zoned commercial highway if they choose before it's recorded. So if they decide they don't want to rezone a portion of that commercial highway, it's not going to affect this decision.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
Do you plan for these to be primary residences?
At this point, some of them will be sold and some of them would be rented probably. So they may all be primary residences, or I guess it really depends on what the market is determining at that time. So we are planning to sell them and/or rent them. So could be a mix of both.
And do you have an idea of what the breakdown will be of units, like 3-bedroom, 1-bedroom? I guess what is?
I don't, at this stage for the rezone, I don't have
Idea of what it'll look like.
we have a general layout, but we have not gotten to the unit specifics yet.
Yeah, that level of detail is not required, especially with a hard zone property. It's not going to town center zoning, it's going to RM15, which is a hard zone property. It'll follow everything in our zoning code. They're allowed the entitlements of the RM15 if it's rezoned to that. Unlike the town center zoning, which is the next item, where they had to provide a conceptual drawing.
I just wanted to ask the applicant while he's here, that's all.
Any other questions? The applicant? Okay, thank you.
I guess question for staff, that property to the south, Josh, where are we at with, to Mr. Gardner's point?
They are currently going through concept plan approval. We were waiting for them to resubmit. They've gone through about, how many reviews? 3 or 4 reviews. We make sure that they check all the boxes, that they meet our code requirements before we advance them. We were waiting for a resubmittal. We didn't get that this week, so you'll probably see the conceptual drawing come to you in January. Maybe the second meeting in January or the first in February.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I think before I forget, let's go into public hearing.
Good call.
Sometimes I get forgetful after we start our discussion, so ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we go into public meeting.
Motion by Member Little, to go in public hearing.
Second.
Second by Member Maloney, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We are now in public hearing. Sometimes I get forgetful after we start our discussion, so ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we go into public meeting.
Motion by Member Little, to go in public hearing.
Second.
Second by Member Maloney, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We are now in public hearing. If you have a comment, please come forward and state your name.
Tina Kelly, Mountain Green. I don't have a lot to say. I think that the county's already dropped the ball and put in too many units in that area, allowed too many units in that area. Although RM15, I've never liked that designation. And the one thing that you don't get with an RM15 that you do get with the town center designation is a development agreement. And I know you can't make an applicant apply for one designation or another, but if they're so equal, the town center has a development agreement, and at least you get some say or control in the outcome of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan Everhart. I live in the house that is, my wife and I own it, that is just to the north and east, so it's their rezone is bordering our property on 2 sides. I am not interested in blocking what they're doing. I just want it to look good. You know, we have that down the road right before you get on the freeway where those townhomes surround that house. It looks really strange. So if it can look good, and also we have a gate in our backyard that allows us to access our backyard. We've had gravel delivered there through the neighbor's property. I don't know if there's any way for us to maintain access to our backyard, but we have a well in our backyard. That's the only way we could drive a truck in there to if our well ever needs serviced. So those are just my concerns.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing that, motion to go out of public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Member Little. Second by Member McMillan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're out of public hearing now. Member Murray has not. Okay. I think now, Member Murray sent an email with his concerns. Since he is not available remotely, I will read them. He's asked that I do that. He says, for this application, I appreciate the work of staff in presenting this application request. I read and understand the points made in the report. Some relevant points of consideration are made. To me, however, one of the most important functions of our general plan and the furthering and the goal of protecting the wishes and goals of the community relative to future development of significant importance to me are 3 points in the county's general plan vision statement. These are compelling and overarching objectives of the general plan. Morgan County attracts, number one, Morgan County attracts families with its quality of life, rural atmosphere, secure environment, and natural beauty. My opinion is that what is being requested will enable a developer to build not a rural project, but an urban scaled and intense use in this already intensely developed part of the community. The scale and intensity is what would be entitled is in stark conflict with this important point goal. Number two, Morgan County recognizes responsibility to the community. This request for intense development entitlement is not consistent with the desires of the community. So many of us moved here and stay here because Mountain Green is special, it's rural, it's not urban. Number three, Morgan County accommodates growth responsibly by integrating new development in a way that supports community values. This is similar to the other values. Mountain Green is rural, peaceful, not urban. What is requested is in stark conflict with the community values of so many of our neighbors. Also not to be ignored is the inadequacy of existing transportation system in the area. Traffic is terrible during peak hours. This creates a nuisance and inconvenience on so many of our neighbors. In addition, public safety can be impacted in terms of response time by the intense traffic. For these reasons, I do not support this application. Request the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of denial. Now we can discuss opinions, concerns.
Yeah, I'm not in favor. I agree that with Tina's points, I don't support this, and I have similar concerns, and I understand that there is a zone to the south that's RM15, but there's also a zone that's A20 next to it, and RR1. So that, I mean, it's just a lot of spot zoning. So they, you know, you could pick up any of the zones next to it. That's my personal opinion.
Record, this is not spot zoning, so we don't need to use that term. Spot zoning is where you go into the middle of something that is entirely one zone and you rezone one property to another zone. That's spot zoning. This is not. Because there's already that level of zoning, so.
Any other comments?
I guess let me ask a few questions. RM15, does that have any mixed uses, or is that strictly residential?
RM15 allows for, pull up the ordinance again. RM15 allows for, if you want to have a garden in your backyard, you can have a garden. It allows for internal accessory dwelling units. It allows for what are now called group homes. It allows for a single family, 2 family, 3 family, 4 family, multifamily dwellings, all with C2 commercial conditional use permits. Then I don't know how this table got copied in. That's an error for American Legal to fix. Oh. So basically, yeah.
And anything above a two-family dwelling would then require a CUP? Is that what you're-
Conditional use permit through Planning Commission authority to approve. Or mitigate negative impacts, since they can't be denied. Yep.
All right. My next concern is for our neighbor here about getting access to his backyard. Can we go back to that map? Little sliver of a property where your cursor is now. What is that? Is that? That's a driveway going to who? There in the back? So that doesn't give them much space to get around their house for fire reasons, I guess. In case the fire department need to get in the backyard. I guess, I mean,
Well, the fire department's, I'm not in the fire department, but they're gonna run the hose from the trucks at the hydrant around the house. They're not gonna drive the truck back there. But
So I
with
guess
the development of these properties, there will be additional streets and connections that are put in that will help further facilitate fire safety and other safety concerns.
I apologize, but I know it's not part of this application, but I mean, I guess that looks like probably a non-conforming lot for setbacks anyways.
What, the house?
Yeah.
Well, I can. It's less than half an acre.
Okay.
And that driveway would have been, it's like its own separate parcel, but it went with the house in the back there. That was their access. So it's been sold.
So the driveway's included in this rezone?
Yes.
I think another thing, just thinking about where this is in Mountain Green, we're running out of space for commercial, and so taking this from highway commercial to more high-density housing, just, I'm not a fan of, but that's my opinion.
I do share your concern on the commercial highway being taken away. We need some more. We would like to have commercial property more available in the county.
Okay.
Steve?
So tell me what the build-out looks like at the end of that. What is, I should know this, R15 is what, a quarter acre?
15 per acre. Well, it's 15 units.
And the way it's calculated, RM15, you subtract 8,000 square feet for the first lot, and then you take the remaining portion and you divide it by 3,000, and that gives you the total number of units you can have on that property.
So do you have, I should probably know this, I don't. What could they do there? What are the possibilities? Do you know that?
I can do a quick calculation.
Well, it depends on the layout with roads too.
Yeah.
You have to take out,
So you don't take out the code doesn't say you take out the net acreage. So you calculate the total number of units they can have based on their total gross acreage. But then they have to try to get that when you have to subtract out approximately between 25 and 35% for infrastructure.
I know you don't know, I'm just asking a guess. what you-
Yeah, let me just see if I can do a quick calc. Really quick. Based on the square footage, they could approximately maybe get 61 units, but that'll go down after you put in infrastructure, curb, gutter, sidewalk, amenities, landscaping, things like that.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
So if they do 61 units there, Josh, in your mind, would they have to go up vertical to get that? How?
All zones in our code are only allowed 35 feet. 35 feet is typically 2 stories for sure, and then depending on how they construct them, maybe 3 stories, but typically for 3 stories you need about 38 to 40 feet. So I would say, I don't know, it'd be tight because you have all the equipment on top of the roof that typically goes in as well.
I think, if I remember right, when the RM15 was rezoned before, they kind of figured it would net maybe 10 per acre after the roads and everything, 10 units per acre. That was brought up at that time.
So it'd probably in your mind be between 40 and 60 then?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah, 4.43 divided by 15 is 66, but we talked about that's not what it is. But so that'd be maximum, even if you use that calculation. So yeah, no more than probably 61. But
Can I see the map just for kicks? Can you enlarge that at all, Josh? Sorry, shrink it maybe.
Oh.
I just
Oh,
want to see
now.
exactly where it is.
Maybe point to where Lee's Market is.
So Lee's Marketplace is right here, and Ace Hardware. There's 2 additional pads. This is a commercial lot. This is a commercial lot. This over here, Mountain Green Village, is supposed to be multifamily, single-family mix. I think there's some apartments that are supposed to be in there as well. RM15 directly to the south is apartments. You have M&D Nelson over here, which was rezoned to town center last year. And then these parcels down here are the subject of the next rezone application. You also have Rome Commercial right here.
Yeah, I can see it.
Then there's the commercial shopping over here. And then all of this is sandwiched between the interstate and Old Highway Road with a future interchange. And for the record, most of Mountain Green is not rural in nature. It is urban level zoning with R120, R18, R110, and townhomes with a lot of commercial. Well, commercial.
recent.
What's that?
I said more recently. All the townhomes are newer.
So is that the same designation that Rome is now? Is that a
No, they're town center.
Their town center.
center?
Rome is Town Center. Their development agreement is called the Basin, which outlines all of their development requirements and their kind of like it fine tunes their entitlements, what they're allowed to do. So this would be RM15, which is exactly what this, yeah, probably to the south, yeah.
As someone who lives in Mountain Green, I'm voting with Blaine, so I'll just say that now.
For the record, Blaine is not voting. because he is not here and he's not online.
He's not online. Yeah,
With his email.
We're allowed to ask a question, why the intent of the, aside from being adjacent to the RM15, why seeking that designation rather than the town center? We're allowed to ask that, or?
If you want to ask,
Okay. I'm sure it's still.
he can choose to answer if he
I
wants.
was asking if I could ask him.
Yeah.
So, can you just explain?
Yeah, we did look at the town center zone, which we are going to present after this, 35 acres. And the reason why we moved away from that and away from the little commercial out on the front, the town center has a requirement for 35% of the area be commercial. And that simply ate too much into this almost 4.5 acre project area that we had here. So we moved towards the RM15 and away from the TC.
So the intent is to remove any commercial and go strictly residential with this piece?
Yes. Yes. We did look at both, though. We looked at some commercial mixed with residential, and in the end, it actually was very difficult to try to do a layout on 4.5 acres with both coexisting in the same 4.5 acres. So residential will be focused here in the next agenda item. We'll show you maybe a concept plan that shows a mixture of the two.
Thank you. Any more discussion?
I guess my thought process is, with that comment, as much as I'd like to see commercial in the area, I would also still want to see a nice looking plan with 35% for a town center zone. That only gives them just over 1.5 acres to try to do commercial, and then fit in some residential after that. So I think this would probably look better, how he has it planned.
I would prefer more commercial, but
Okay.
Well, I would probably look at what Mountain Green wants more than what I think, so I'm curious to see what their proposal is. Do you have idea on?
I mean, I would be more for it being town center or even commercial. I just hate losing some commercial to go to more high density units, and even, looking at Mountain Green and our tax basis, and, we don't have a cement plant, we don't have, taxes, and sadly residential doesn't help us the way commercial does from that standpoint. So I'm just thinking like longer term. And there's only so much land left in Mountain Green, to Josh's point, because so much has been developed already. I feel like there's not a ton left that's commercial, especially right off Old Highway. So, that's my take, especially without the interchange being done and just all the things. So I'm not supportive of this rezone, but that's just how I'm voting, so it's my opinion.
I'd be curious to hear what Chance thinks too.
That's why I was curious to ask what the thought process behind is. I mean, 15.
One.
And kind of seeing how this is going to continue to develop further south of that towards the freeway there. The hard part being we can't tell him, hey, we want to deny you need to do it this way. So in a perfect world, we'd ask him to do that. Unfortunately, we can't at this one. We, yeah, opinion being, we could deny and have him refile, and at the same point, it meets all that criteria that it's asked to. So I'm kind of torn too.
Okay.
Not a very strong opinion one way or the other. I'm trying to see the logic in both and just to confuse you more.
Yeah, I can see that. I guess my question too is, with all of the development coming into Mountain Green, would this be something Mountain Green would not want in terms of allowing people to find a place that would be something you wouldn't?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think a lot of people in Mountain Green are feeling like all the growth in the county is always in Mountain Green, and we get all of it, and I get it. We have the infrastructure. There's reasons. I understand that, but you know, this is likely, I assume, Highlands Water. Looking at the map, right? Like, can you speak to that, Josh?
Yeah, I highly doubt that.
I highly doubt that.
It'll
Okay.
either be Cottonwood Mutual or it'll be Mountain Green Mutual Water Company.
Okay.
Given the history, I don't think Highlands Water is on the table.
Okay. Well, water resources. We don't have a light. The interchange hasn't been moved. I think people are upset in Mountain Green over Rome being, a lot of them are rentals. So, I mean, I think the sentiment that is a concern, and I think that you can't limit what people do when they buy a townhouse, if they rent it or not, or any home, at least now, because our code doesn't not allow that. So, yeah, I think it's a lot of growth, and regardless of how you feel future, if Mountain Green should incorporate or not, that's a whole different discussion we don't need to get into today. But I think, you know, we have half the population, but we don't have half the commercial tax basis. And there's only so much Mountain Green left. And if we just keep throwing homes up, those hurt us financially, especially primary homes, from a tax. So I'm just thinking in like long-term 20-year Mountain Green. Once they're built, we can't take them away. So that's my concern, is we just only have so much land left right on Old Highway. And it sounds like we have a lot of other townhouses going up near this area already, or RM15 development's already happening on the 9-acre parcel and along Old Highway. So those are my concerns as a resident. I'd love to see some commercial road taxes.
No more discussion.
Still goes to the commission.
Did we get an answer on this gentleman's well access? I didn't, if we did, I
Well,
didn't hear it.
I don't think we can deal with that right now. On a rezone.
No, not on the rezone, and it's something I would suggest he consult his attorney. I know he mentioned he had a deed. He probably has an easement, is what I'm guessing, or some sort of. I would definitely consult with an attorney whether you have a prescriptive easement or something else for access.
Or you could talk to the property owner. Just an option.
Okay, if there's no more discussion, we're ready for a motion if someone uses.
I'll do it. I move we forward a negative recommendation to the County Commission for the Gardner Development Rezone, application number 24.060, changing 4.43 acres from a split designation of RR1, A20, Commercial Highway, CH, and RM15 to RM15 and to RM15 completely, and reflect that change on the future land use map from a split designation of rural residential 1 and town center to town